this is our 8th anniversary. And I want to tell you, this is like, one of the first things I want to say is the most important thing today is I want to recognize the one woman that literally inspired me to create this day and this movement. When I was in Honduras on vacation, literally, I didn't realize it was the murder capital of the world. And that's where I ended up volunteering for an organization called Adelante that provides microloans to impoverished women. And when I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, these people were living on dirt floors and the whole thing. And I was like, this is so unbelievable. And I met this one woman. She was 72 years old and she had 3 little kids that were her grandchildren. And I'm like, how in the world did do you have these 3 little kids? And she said it was literally her daughter passed away and the husband, went wherever he left. And she was now responsible for the livelihoods of these 3 little kids. And so she decided to get a microloan from the Adelante Foundation in Honduras. And she was able to open up her window in her 1-room hut with the dirt floor. And she was able to, from that money she earned, she was able to pay $1 a month for those kids to go to school. And literally what I learned from all the stats is that when these women get these microloans, 90% of it goes to educate their children, provide for their families, and this uplifts the entire communities. And this is happening worldwide. And when these women literally are empowered in business, they have self-confidence, they have dignity, they don't allow human rights violations. And that was in 2013. And that was what brought me back to New York. And I said, my gosh, if we could create a simplified movement in this world to empower women in business, we could change the world. And that's why Women's Entrepreneurship Day is here today. And this is why I want to say that I hope everyone today is inspired by at least one person, but I'm sure you're going to be inspired by everyone because everyone's so incredible who we're going to see today. And this is super exciting because women entrepreneurs do make a difference. So I also want to say thank you to Amazon's AWS, who has come on board to be one of our partners and sponsors. I want to say thank you to the incredible, amazing team at Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, who's hosting this Zoom and who've been the most wonderful people to work with. I also want to say thank you to UBS, our law firm who's protecting us, Covington, and also the NFT Ninja Hideout, who's one of our partners this year. We're super excited. I want to say, because of Women's Entrepreneurship Day, which is super exciting, is last year, on Women's Entrepreneurship Day, we had an amazing conversation who's going to be back now, Judy Human. Because of her, we launched the first ever Women's Disability Startup Cohort in partnership with Together International. We initiated it, we funded it right here in Women's Entrepreneurship Day Summit. And now we're so excited, Google for Startups came on to fund the whole program in a bigger way. And this is what our mission's all about: creating change, empowering everybody, and inspiring everybody to make a difference in this world and to support and celebrate and empower women in business. Woo-hoo! So thank you so much for being here today. And I hope you're inspired and I hope you have the best time. And let's begin.
Hi, I'm Darby Schlosser, and I want to be a veterinarian who specializes in musical therapy for animals.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Lee, and when I grow up, I want to be an artist. One day, I'm going to have my painting in the museum too.
Dallas Grant. I want to be a pastry chef when I grow up. I'm only 7, but when I grow up, I want to have my own bakery that is called Dallas Cafe.
Hi, I'm Belle Henry. I want to be a doctor when I grow up because I could cure bad diseases like COVID-19 and cancer and the flu.
Hi, my name is Ari Kane and I'm 6 years old. When I grow up, I want to be a veterinarian because my dog goes to a woman and she's a veterinarian and she told me girls can do whatever they want.
Hi, I'm Brooke Monroe Conaway, and when I grow up, I want to be an actress because I love playing pretend and being different characters. I know I can do it because I'm a girl and girls are powerful and girls can be anybody they want.
Amanda Daniel. I like to be a meteorologist because
I like to tell about weather, and I like checking the weather every day. My name is Annabelle Ross. I want to be so many things when I grow up, but if I could choose one person to be when I grow up, it would have to be Lucille Ball, an amazing actress and an incredible woman. I remember in one episode she was fighting for equal rights. Aren't we still fighting for that? Anyways, if I turn on the news right now, I bet I'd find people shouting, "Fight for women! Fight for women!"
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng from Queens, New York, and it's an honor to send greetings to everyone attending the virtual Women's Entrepreneurship Day Summit. I'm delighted to join you for this outstanding event, and I'm proud to commemorate the extraordinary work that the Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization does for women across the globe. Since 2013, it has worked tirelessly each and every day to empower, celebrate, and support women in business and ignite a network of women leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs to initiate startups, drive economic expansion, and advance communities all around the world. It has been a powerful and essential voice and resource, and I know that its efforts will continue to help even more women succeed in the months and years ahead. I also applaud and commend its founder, Wendy Diamond, and I thank her for the exceptional leadership that she continues to provide. In Congress, I've worked to champion initiatives that seek to increase support for female entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses. This includes legislation I reintroduced in June to reauthorize the Interagency Committee on Women's Business Enterprise, a U.S. government entity responsible for coordinating federal resources to help women-owned businesses grow and succeed. I've also been proud to co-sponsor the 21st Century Youth Entrepreneurship Act, a bill to expand entrepreneurship programs in public schools, community colleges, libraries, and other community spaces to equip young people with the tools necessary to become the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators. In addition, I helped pass legislation into law to help small businesses, including women-owned businesses, recover from severe economic losses caused by COVID. These include providing forgivable loans and grants for restaurants that gave priority to establishments that were owned by women. Furthermore, I recently introduced the Marshall Plan for Moms, a bold and sweeping initiative that seeks to revitalize and restore mothers in the workforce. It is critical that we do everything possible to help women succeed in businesses, and that includes helping them rebound from the impact of the coronavirus crisis. As I've said previously, helping women entrepreneurs grow, thrive, and start and sustain their businesses is a ticket to helping ensure a stronger economy, as well as creating jobs, spurring innovation, and strengthening the future prosperity of our country. I believe our government must be a strong partner in helping women entrepreneurs flourish, and I remain committed to making sure that happens. When women entrepreneurs succeed, America succeeds. In closing, I again want to applaud the Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization for its great work and its many accomplishments and contributions. I send my warmest wishes for an enjoyable event and much continued success. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
I am thrilled to be here with you today to celebrate Women's Entrepreneurship Day. You know, we still have a long way to go, but the fight for women's equality has made remarkable progress, even over the last few years. We need to make sure that women, especially women of color, have access to economic opportunity and mobility. For way too long, women have had no seat at the table when decisions are being made. I've seen this in my own career, and especially when I was working in venture capital. I can't tell you the number of times I was the only woman at a board table during a meeting. That should concern everyone. When you don't have diversity in decision making, you have blind spots. Right now, we're in the midst of a global pandemic, one of the worst public health and economic crises of our time. I don't know where I'd be without the strength and wisdom of Dr. Alexander Scott and Commissioner Infante Green. Every single day, we grapple with the reality that the COVID-19 pandemic has hit women the hardest. Far too many women have lost their jobs, and others were forced to quit as they found themselves impacted by increased childcare responsibilities. Our healthcare workers fighting on the front lines are predominantly women, and women-owned businesses are struggling. I am so committed to ensuring that women entrepreneurs can find success even now during this pandemic. And I know that each and every one of you watching today shares that goal. I am so grateful for you and the work you're doing. Keep up the great work. Keep going. Be well, be safe, and enjoy the day.
Thanks to my friend Wendy Diamond, our founder, for her incredible vision in making this celebration happen. I've enjoyed participating in your past events at the United Nations, where women from all walks of life came together to share ideas. And I'm proud that our administration was part of one of the very first Women's Entrepreneurship Days in the nation. The work you do to educate the world and empower women in business globally is vital. And the fact that your organization is an all-volunteer one speaks to the energy behind these efforts to financially elevate women across the globe to alleviate poverty and help them and their communities succeed. It's important now more than ever to discuss the future of women in business and entrepreneurship. We need to continue to elevate underrepresented voices on key issues. This is crucial now because women, particularly women of color, have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Remember all the talk about the essential workers and how they were the unsung heroes of the pandemic? No surprise that 65% of essential workers are women. Countless women have either lost their minimum wage jobs or have been working on the front lines of the battle against this deadly virus. The toll this crisis will take on millions of women is vast, and we cannot afford to let this national moment pass without embracing the opportunity to right some of the wrongs that have plagued women long before COVID-19. When I talk to business leaders from Buffalo to Manhattan, I ask them what they think the greatest barrier to this comeback is. After we deal with the healthcare crisis, they say unprompted that they have a childcare problem. They can't get the female workers back because unfortunately, the weight of responsibility to this day still falls on women, especially when schools are shut down. In order to get our economy firing back on all cylinders, we must address the stress and burdensome cost of childcare. It is no longer an individual family's problem. It's a problem for our economic recovery. And it's finally now part of the national conversation. Here in New York, we are investing in childcare. And we also nurture and help businesses and entrepreneurs and MWBEs by giving them a share of funding to help reach their goals and ensure their success. New York has also made strides to support women and minority-owned businesses right here. In 2014, Governor Cuomo set the nation's highest goal for MWBEs at 30% of state contracts. New York has awarded over $3 billion in state contracts to MWBEs to help them succeed. We also focus intensely on issues that affect women's lives directly. It didn't take a pandemic for us to know that it was wrong to force someone to go to work sick because they need to put food on the table for their family. So we enacted a paid sick leave policy. And it was wrong that parents had to choose between earning a living and being there during the first months of welcoming a child into the world or being there in the last days for a dying loved one. So we enacted the most generous paid family leave program in America. Ending gender and racial inequality, goals that have eluded a definitive resolution throughout most of our nation's history, are also worth fighting for now more than ever. In the 100 years since the passage of the 19th Amendment, we've made great strides with more women, especially women of color, rising to leadership positions in business, politics, and beyond. And I'm very excited to see the elevation of the very first woman vice president, who will be a role model for many, many others. But until women's rights are fully protected and women are equally represented in the corridors of power, we still have more work to do. Now more than ever, we need to embrace this fight for real change. Organizations like WIDO bring women together so we can lift each other up and pass along our wisdom to the next generation. Thank you for all you do, and I look forward to addressing you in person next year at the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Kathy Hochul. She's our first New York State woman governor. That is unbelievable. So next up, I want to introduce you on our virtual stage, woohoo, Nicola Corzine, the head of the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center, and Paloma Bludgeon, who is at the Bank of the West, empowering women entrepreneurs. Woohoo! Excited? Go, girls.
Wendy, thank you. Happy anniversary. 8 years strong. Here's to the next 8. And most importantly, to all our incredible women entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or young girls watching, thank you. Thank you for leaning in and finding a path forward where you are going to go achieve those dreams and visions. We need you now more than ever. I'm so excited for this conversation that I get to have with Paloma today. I'm Nicola Corzine, as Wendy perfectly said, founding CEO, Executive Director at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And in case you don't know us, understandable if you don't, we are a nonprofit who is really committed to prioritizing equitable entrepreneurship for all. We want to remove barriers and forge ahead in creating systems of opportunity where every entrepreneur can achieve their maximum potential. All the education, resources, mentorship, and sponsorship that we provide is done for free. And while we're incredibly grateful for the fact of doing that, it's really us that gets to turn it around and say, it's our gratitude to do that because of what you do for us. We have now over 50,000 entrepreneurs that are part of our global community from more than 120 countries. 51% are women. So not only do we know that our women entrepreneurs are truly the new majority in this world, we're also inspired to be able to help and learn from them each and every day at the center. Our work at the center is all around trying to understand what is getting in the way of our entrepreneurs achieving their maximum potential, and how can we bring forward new insights, new perspectives, and new opportunities so that they can go achieve their dreams. And one of our biggest focuses, obviously, with the community that we have, is looking at the barriers that are plaguing our women entrepreneurs. As you've already heard from the voices of the young ones to the old ones, the inspiration and the intention is there. So it is a little bit heartbreaking when we see challenges around the wealth gap issues affecting our women. Still, coming out of COVID, we find ourselves realizing that our women entrepreneurs are receiving much lower valuations in a venture environment than our male entrepreneurs are doing. The last statistic is still showing a 70% discrepancy. A 70% discrepancy, just hold that for a moment, than our male entrepreneurs are. And equally, when our women are paying themselves and able to, because of all the goodness that they're bringing forward, they're doing so at a rate of $46,000 less per year than our male entrepreneurs are. So this past year, we said, we want to understand why that continues to persist. And most importantly, we don't want it to persist in the next 3 to 10 years. So we are doubling down on research and understanding, and most importantly, we hope interventions that will eliminate this from being a truth in future years. We invite you, if you haven't yet had a chance, to please make sure you visit us online, see some of this research, and most importantly, take action. It starts with awareness, and then a commitment and a pledge to say no more, and then being able to lean in and say, now let's pull our women forward so this doesn't continue to happen. And along those notes, I'd love to invite Paloma to sort of share some of the incredible work that's happening at Bank of the West around some of those pay priorities, which I know is a passion project we have in great alignment as one of our most notable sponsors and supporters of the work at the center. Paloma, would you share?
Yes, of course. And thank you so much, Nicola and Wendy. I'm just so excited to be here and really to celebrate everyone within the women entrepreneur community and everything you're doing to improve our communities, to serve them, to just make our world a better place. And I know all of these women on the phone are virtually or can do that. So for those of you, my name is Paloma Bludgeon, and I work at Bank of the West. For those of you who aren't familiar with Bank of the West is a full service bank operating in 19 states. We offer everything from retail and consumer banking, business banking, commercial banking, as well as wealth management. And we are part of the BNP Paribas global family. At Bank of the West, we are a fundamentally different bank. Our leaders consider issues like gender equality, diversity, and impact in the world when making decisions. And I'm really fortunate to lead our women entrepreneurs segment at the bank, where I get to put together strategies and solutions to help women entrepreneurs as they build and grow their businesses. Nicola made the point about pay equity and especially women entrepreneurs taking salaries. We did an event, I think just a month ago, and someone brought that up saying like, make sure you're paying yourselves. And Nicola and I think we all were just shocked how many women like, I still haven't taken a salary. So that's just something, we're very mission aligned on how we want to start to help and serve this community. So Bank of the West, we lead with a positive banking approach. So we're leading and incorporating ESG into all tenets of what we're doing by driving growth both through that's sustainable and equitable. And it's core to our culture. We have a female CEO, which is one of 6% of all female CEOs in the world. Our executive management group is actually 30% female, and we have over 50% female employees. So as a bank, diversity and equity and inclusion are huge for us. For us as a bank, there's certain things we can help support women entrepreneurs. And I think one of the things that we just find so disturbing is, the lack of access to capital that continues to challenge women entrepreneurs. I believe there's a stat specifically saying that women typically receive 12% less when they go to a bank asking for a loan. Some of that we're still trying to study where that lies. Is that because the entrepreneur is not asking for more, or they just don't feel confident? So one of our big tenets is making sure we can support the education process for the entrepreneur to really understand how they can access capital, whether it be through a bank, a community development financial institution, or going the angel or venture route. And we've done a lot of work with the center to help support those sort of learnings and education. But I think that's where it's critical. We want to start early and make sure people understand what those options are and how to set themselves up best for success. We are the exclusive banking partner of the center, and we are just so fortunate to be able to participate actively in all of their programming and provide our banking expertise. I laugh, we've done events with entrepreneurs and, just some of the questions that I think maybe from a banker perspective, I think are obvious. There are lots of questions and we want to help support you through those. You shouldn't feel like you're going into a bank without that knowledge. So that's how we try to help support the entrepreneurs of the center. In addition, I mentioned women entrepreneurs are a huge focus for the bank. So back in 2019, we actually created what we call WeSource, which is a website that we've created that really help women, regardless of the stage of starting a business, whether it be dreaming, growing, thriving, provides resources around what they need to know and also some inspiration. And we've continued that as the bank has launched its digital publication, Means and Matters. And there's lots of great content and thought leadership there to really help support female entrepreneurs. One of our big pieces that we were really happy to put out was how to get certified. So there's some great, really technical and call to action information there to really help people on their journeys. In addition to the events we do with Nasdaq, we also host events for our clients and community to make sure that we're getting them up to speed. We had a great event on the She Session and how we can really move towards recovery, as well as just lots of inspirational events from our own clients who have some great stories. I think Nicola and I are both proud. We had a shared client through Aisha Dozie, who came in through the Milestone Maker program that is now working with the bank, and to have her be featured on Oprah's Favorite Things list just a couple weeks ago is just huge to see someone from that startup stage to really growing and thriving. And I think that's really special. So as a bank, we continue to do different things to help support this community. We've got a lot of exciting things coming also for 2022, lots of more education, because we know that's where we can really add value to this community. But I'm really just happy to be here. And again, to every single female entrepreneur on the phone, congratulations for taking that step, for going there, for building your own financial freedom. It's huge. And I hope we can continue to support you on that journey.
And I know you are. I know you absolutely are. I mean, one of the things just to sort of highlight on this partnership, and I think what we all know with our women entrepreneurs, although maybe not statistically, coming out of COVID, our women entrepreneurs are now finding themselves with 6 hours more on average per day workload than they were before.
Yeah.
6 hours more per day, my friends. That's so much. You already have so much on your plate as is. One of the fun programs, and yes, you can have fun as an entrepreneur. You deserve it. You should have it. Make time for you. Is we actually have an upcoming program on November 30th, completely focused on women's wellness. And it's hosted by the incredible Malika Chopra from Chopra Global, who I'm sure you all know. Not only is she a mom and an entrepreneur and an incredible author, she's going to be in conversation with one of our board members, Paloma, and I know her well, Michelle DeGangi, who is an SVP at Bank of the West and really well recognized for her leadership in prioritizing mentorship and sponsorship of women. It takes a village. I think that phrase gets used so much, but I think for our women now more than ever, we know the village that everyone should have access to. And we all here today, led by Wendy, are committed and inspired to make sure you have access to that village. Now more than ever, we want to be here in support of all that you're doing. Again, I'm just going to keep drumming that good drum. Be the inspiration that you are for your children and for others that look up to you. And we are just so inspired and so grateful for all the work that you're leading out there. Wendy, thank you so much for allowing us to have this conversation today. Celebrate big time. You all deserve it. And we will be seeing you, we hope, very soon. Thank you, Paloma.
Thank you so much, Nicola, and congratulations to everyone.
This is so fun. Okay, all right, Nicola, Paloma, we are with you and we are so excited to partner and collaborate to support women entrepreneurs. All right, next up, these women have over $3 billion to invest. And they are with us today to teach us all how to have the greatest pitch ever so we can get investment for our new startups and for all the women founders out there. And I want to introduce now who's going to lead it for us, my dear friend. She's been with us since like day one, I think, right, Lauren? Woohoo! Anyways, Lauren from Reuters, who's going to moderate the greatest panel on how to have the greatest winning pitch.
Great, thank you so much, Wendy. I'm going to invite our investors to unmute themselves. I'm Lauren Young. I am a jack of all trades editor at Reuters News, and I'm so excited to be here again this year, 8th year. And I want to introduce our panel. What we're going to be doing today, it's kind of a little bit like Shark Tank. We're going to have 3 female entrepreneurs pitch us, and I'm going to have this amazing team of investors give some critiques and some actionable tips. So first off, I'm just looking at you on the screen, so I don't know how everyone else is seeing it, but I see my dear friend Kathleen Corbett. Kathleen was actually my mentor when I was a journalist at Business Week, and she is currently a female investor, and she also is a director at Mass Mutual Financial, and she's coming to us live from Connecticut, I think, right, Kathleen?
Yeah, good to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. Kimberly Marshall, you look so like sunny down in Miami with your sunflowers behind you. Kimberly Marshall works with Goldman Sachs. Her official title is an advisor launched with Goldman Sachs. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us today. We also have Peggy Wallace. Peggy is the co-CEO of Golden Seeds. And Peggy, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't remember where you're coming from though.
New York.
Ah, great.
But I'm actually in Maryland today, but New York is where.
Well, I'm waving this way then to you in Maryland. Kavita Gupta, Delta Blockchain Fund. Kavita, where are you today?
New York.
Oh, excellent. And then finally, Andrea Lowe. Andrea, where I'm looking for you on my screen. Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Andrea's official title is she is the Senior Director of Investments for the Stellar Development Foundation. And Andrea, remind me where you are today.
I'm based in San Francisco today.
Perfect. So we've got it all represented here. And I want to thank all of you ladies for joining us today. I just want to get straight to the videos if that's okay, because it'll give us a little bit more time to do some critiquing. So our first pitch is going to be from Dr. Andrea Britton. And let's go to the tape.
Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Andrea Britton. I'm a board certified OBGYN and lactation consultant, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Libby, the only breast pump on the market that's specifically designed to prevent and correct low breast milk supply. Now, what you may not know is that low milk supply is the #1 reason for early cessation of breastfeeding. So out of all the people who initiate breastfeeding, only 25% actually make it to the recommended goal of 6 months exclusive breastfeeding, which has detrimental effects on both the health of mom and baby. Libby is here to close the gap. What we have done is created a novel, patented pump that is audibly and visually discreet. It is built into a bra, so you put it on in the morning, you set it and forget it, so that you have complete freedom of pumping to pump as frequently as you need to or want to be able to support your breastfeeding journey as long as you want to, or as long as is recommended by public health associations.
Unmute myself. Thank you so much, Dr. Braden. I really appreciate it. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart because I didn't have enough milk and it really sucked. And I did the lactation consultant thing, everything. So this is something I wish I had had when my son was a baby. Feel free in the comments if you've got things to share, people that are joining us here today, curious to hear your breastfeeding stories too. I'll just kick off with you, Kimberly. What do you think about this pitch? What really stands out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that she started with her credentials and why she's qualified to innovate in this space. You know, she only had 60 seconds to tell us about what she's building. I think she packed a lot into it. And then I would probably add some of her larger market sizing numbers, the actual number of women, not just the percentages, earlier in the pitch.
Andrea, what stood out for you?
I loved her energy, the pace, very compelling. What I wanted to see was the product, though, because I think she has an actual product she could share, and that would really sell it well. And then I was very curious what the cause of the low breast milk supply was. Is it because moms are busy? Is it because they're stressed? And so I wanted that link more closely to the product. But otherwise, really great, succinct pitch.
And then I don't know, Andrea, while we have you, if you actually have a demo that you can hold up for everybody, but I'm going to ask Kavita. Go ahead.
I do, but it's upstairs, so I'd have to run and go get it.
Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry, I didn't even think about it.
You can share. We could, or maybe if you have a link that you can put in the chat too, that would be good.
Now let me see if
yeah, Kavita, anything that stood out particularly for you?
Hey, Dr. Braden, great thought process. I think what I really liked was your calming energy and a very straightforward way of putting it together. Like within a minute, I actually can think about why do you need the product? Like I understand the gap, I understand the need. I also literally can think in my head different need for women, like different type of women based on different reasons for using it. I think for me, the only one thing which I would have loved, apart from, of course, if you had a product display somewhere, because the ease of using it is something which is going to define if it's going to work or not. But I think apart from that, if there would be like a simple, very easy number, because like for me as an investor day in and day out, within like the first 10 seconds, if I can put in $10, I can solve the problem of the biggest thing of your child, or whatever, $100 or something. That would have made me connect with this, that before going deep into it, if there's even a price range which is going to work for most of the people.
That's great feedback. I'm wondering, Kathleen, from you, if there's any details or anything that you wanted her to omit or hear more about.
I love the pitch as well. I think I was one of the people who didn't make the 25%. So I think many of us had empathy with that. I think just to add on to what Kavita just said, I think cost to the consumer. I mean, when we think about the need here, knowing, just what is the price point, and the demand certainly is out there, but how affordable is this product for the, I think you said 32 million people who are really in need of this, or more, 25 billion. But anyway, I think that's what I would probably really want to hear right up front is where's the price point for most of the consumers.
And then Peggy, just from you, any final thoughts that you want to share?
I thought it was terrific. You established your expertise and the product seems very credible. I would have wanted a quick sort of, is this going to be sold direct to consumer? Or is this a little bit more FDA approved? And what stage are you at on approval, so that I could start benchmarking sort of where the timing in your sort of development curve you are. So I think it's really just something to indicate, that this is FDA or not, and when you would be going to market. And I think the comments on price point were also very important, that this would, I don't know, but I'm assuming would be an affordable solution.
any suggestions on how she should market this to investors? I'm going to ask you, Andrea, since I see you right there in the corner of my eye. And you're on mute.
How she should market to investors. I think having them deeply understand the problem. A lot of investors may not understand that problem, is going to be key. So outlining the market size, any demand proof points you have, and really tailoring like the pain is important. And so a lot of them will have wives. And so if they can kind of compare it with that, and then having the product visually is important. I think some of the investors have probably gone through this process with their wives. And so again, like having that product sell itself. And then of course, just knowing your unit economics down pat and whatnot.
Karen, I want to thank you for putting your comment in the chat, and I invite other people who are participating. The cost of formula is immense, and the cost of breast milk, aside from the occasional Guinness that you might drink to try and get things flowing a little bit, is definitely free. So our bodies are amazing. I'm going to move on, if it's okay for everyone, to our next pitch, but we are going to be bringing back all the entrepreneurs at the end of this to talk a little bit. So our next pitch is from, and it's interesting because we have very interesting idea here. Ishita Shah. Ishita, where are you? And if we could just roll Ishita's pitch, I would love to see it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ishita Shah, co-founder and CEO of Microbials, and we develop milk-derived therapeutics for infectious diseases. Many current antibiotics are becoming increasingly resistant to, and therefore antimicrobial resistance has become a major healthcare threat, killing nearly 700,000 people every single year. Women's health is dramatically impacted by this resistance as well, and so our lead indication is recurrent bacterial vaginosis, which is an ordeal for nearly 1 billion women globally. Existing antibiotics can fix some of these infections, but only temporarily, causing secondary infections and reproductive issues. We have discovered antimicrobial peptides that can selectively kill only the bad bacteria while leaving the healthy microbiome intact. Other peptides discovered through our AI-enabled platform can be useful for vaginosis and additional indications. These can be developed into topical applications that can reduce the burden of disease and prolong the time in remission. Our discoveries are IP protectable in a TAM of $50 billion. We are a spin-out from UC Davis, and my co-founders have formed 3 healthcare companies, raising $350 million. I'm a molecular microbiologist, and prior to developing this technology at UC Davis, I have worked in infectious diseases at Genentech and Columbia. We are Microbials, and we are developing therapies that women really need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ishita, who is here live with us today. I'm curious, Peggy, for you, what stands out about this particular pitch?
Obviously, an excellent scientific presentation with a lot of people around it that have the business expertise. I would like to have maybe heard a little bit more about what the current solutions are versus, so the advantage, what's going on. Are they like black box and you're not? That sort of a little bit more context there. And then I'll just also comment that I have some experience on milk derived, and if anybody does, I think something quick, because there are many issues in terms of sourcing milk. Is it what happens to cows? It's actually quite a complex supply chain. So you may be speaking to others who have some familiarity with that. So you may want to address that point head on.
Great points. Thank you so much. Kimberly, for you, anything in particular that you want to hear more about, or things that you thought she should omit? Oh, you're on mute. This is, the 2021 catchphrase.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. Hi, Dr. Shah. I think earlier in the pitch described the product. You mentioned it being a milk-derived, it's therapeutical, but not until later on do you mention it's topical. For someone not familiar in this space, I think it's helpful to put that part up front. And then you mentioned that your founders have 3 healthcare companies that raised $350 million. I would actually maybe focus on the exits instead. And if they did exit, say, hey, they've raised 3 companies that have had great exits. And maybe if they did not have exits, don't mention that they raised $350 million.
Great feedback. Thank you so much. Kavita, I'm curious to hear from you what stood out about this pitch.
Hey Ishita, it was really good. I could feel the energy. I could feel your passion about the product, like you are really deep into it. I think you did a really good job of giving your co-founder's background and your background to have the balance between the business and the research. I also thought that when you were basically explaining where it's going to be used, that was really well done. But I think you took a long time to come to how it is going to be used. So like I was waiting to understand, is it something I'm going to drink? Is it something going to be topical? And I think that, so for the longest time when you were giving your pitch, I kept on thinking, oh, if I'm vegan or if something is allergic, so am I drinking it, right? Only at the end, I got to realize, okay, I don't even have to think in that direction. And then second thing is, I think you spent, if you're giving a 1 minute to someone, you spent a lot of time talking about the science and the invention and behind it. I think having this is patented and something which you just dropped here, that the last solution was 40-year-old and this is like after 40 years and we can just do it, create the technologies that we can create in the lab. If I would have heard it, I would be like completely tuned into your pitch to know, oh, so till 40 years, there's nothing done. This is new now. You know, that's for me is what would have really worked.
Kathleen, I'm curious, she established her credibility towards the end of the pitch that she's a scientist and these are the team. Does that matter to you as an investor, or do you want to know that information up front? Or if she were going into a meeting, it would just be on the table on a piece of paper?
I think if she is coming and started talking about a topic which is like so deep, which like 0.001% of the people in the world can talk about, I'm already assuming. So she definitely did in the end or in the starting, you can do either, but like I already assumed you had. So for me, it was a tick mark at the end, you know. But what really got me away is that, as I said, I wasn't sure when you were talking about that product, how am I supposed to use that product or why are you doing it? I mean, if nobody has done it in 40 years and you have that competitive edge, I think you should start from there. You know?
We have a comment in the chat from Samara. Thank you so much. She said if they had 2 minutes, they could really say a lot more. And, you know, if we had 2 days to have the summit, I mean, time is everything, Kathleen. But for you, I'm wondering what stood out about this and if there's anything else that you think she should add.
So I thought you covered a lot in just a minute. Very impressed. I guess one of the things, so I followed along. I'm kind of familiar with this area, and so I thought that was very impressive, especially when you sort of tied in the end the work that you've done with UC Davis and how your other co-founders have worked to, I guess, raise $350 million. I guess I'm more curious about how do those co-founders work with you in this particular product. And you mentioned something about AI-enabled platform. Wasn't quite sure how that fit into the product. And then lastly, again, I always come to price to the consumer and whether or not this would be covered by some form of health insurance as well.
Good point. Andrea, I'm going to let you have the final thought here.
Yeah, I thought you did a really good job of distilling complex concepts into a problem statement and the solution. I wanted to know where in the product development process you are, because it sounds like it could be really early. It might require a lot of approval. And then echoing everyone else, I would say, wanted to know what the alternatives are and why no one has done this, because there may be a reason why. So, but overall, one really great pitch.
Thank you. And thank you all. And thank you so much. We're going to move on to our final pitch, which is Liz Tang. And if we could play the tape.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm the founder of MediMinder, and this is an EpiPen. 32 million Americans, including my 5-year-old son, have life-threatening food allergies that require that these go wherever they go. Despite phone reminders and sticky notes on my door, I still sometimes leave it behind. I'll run an errand without it, or I'll come back inside and leave it in the car. I've created a chip that can be added to any life-saving, urgently needed medication, and it'll alert you if you're too far from the medication, if your child's too far from the medication, if it's too hot or too cold. And then once we build a critical mass, we'll be able to network the medications to crowdsource the nearest life-saving medication you need in an emergency. We'll start with EpiPens because that's the life I live every day, and then we'll move on to half a dozen other urgently needed life-saving medications that people around the world are already carrying.
So much, Liz. I live in fear of peanut allergies with all of my son's friends, so I'm super careful. I wonder, I'll start with you, Andrea, because I feel like I've gone to last a few times. What really resonates with you about this particular pitch?
So again, love seeing the product and really understood the problem, just how you deeply understand it, and you were very natural. So that immediately clicked for me. I was really curious, like, what's the market size? I know you said 35 million, but like, what's the TAM, price point, and like, is this a hair on fire problem for folks that they need to be connected and networked with everyone?
Great feedback. And we have a good question actually in the chat, and I encourage you to keep putting your comments there. The question is, who would be her partners in the medical, who would it be? Would it be the medical industry? Kimberly, I'm going to ask you what really stands out for you here, and what advice would you have in terms of things she should add or omit?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Liz. I thought she did a great job stating the problem and making it relevant. I think it's something that everyone could really understand. Similar to Andrea, I also thought great product demo. I did think the data sharing crowdsourcing piece was interesting, but did not understand as well like how useful, how important that was in the market.
Great. I see you nodding your head. Kathleen, what do you think?
I thought that piece was very clever too, in terms of the networking potential. When you have, you don't have access to a critical EpiPen, that's really fascinating. I guess my one question is, you mentioned that it can somehow identify that your child is away from your product. Like, I can get if it was the parent, maybe your iPhone buzzes or something and said you left it in the car. Wasn't sure how you would be able to identify that your child is away from the product. So that left a question mark for me.
That's a really great question. Peggy, I'm curious for you. Is this a company you would consider investing in? What resonates with you?
Well, I would want to know, for me, the TAM question would be more, how often does somebody not have the EpiPen? So how is it, the addressable market to me is how many incidences of this happening and the person doesn't have the pen. So I'd want to drill down into that. And then there was a comment here, which I couldn't help my own mind. When you say you're crowdsourcing it, do you mean that if I had this, I would know who around me has that drug, or do you, the company, know? Because that did seem kind of strange that I could be wandering around and know who's carrying something, and how that might be used. So I think for me, a lot of it would be about the TAM and the revenue model then. Is this a subscription? I think that has to get on the table pretty quickly, but it's very different. You've definitely identified something here, out of your own experience that I haven't encountered before, so it's intriguing.
We have several questions too about privacy concerns in the chat. So,
so I was wondering, like, would I know that somebody has an EpiPen, or would the company know? And
yeah, when we bring Liz on, maybe she'll tell us how she's thought that out. But think about it, Liz, because we're going to ask you. Andrea, for you, I'm curious, is there anything that really stands out here about this particular pitch? Any helpful, constructive criticism you would share?
Yeah, I thought that she connected with the audience really well immediately, and just made it come alive with the product. So thought you built trust very, very immediately, but again, describing a little bit more of the why on the network piece and the crowdsourcing, as everyone has mentioned.
I think this qualifies as a mompreneur. I can never say that word, but a mom who's figured out a niche and is trying to fill it. Kavita, I'm going to let you have the final thoughts here. What do you think about Liz's pitch?
Thank you. Liz, I love the way you started your presentation. I think you got me connected and like both emotionally and mentally directly towards your product. You had the display there. You showed me the chip which you're going to do. I think what I missed was when you started talking. So I definitely get, it's like, so first thing which came in my mind is like, it's like, your iPad, your iPhone tags, like the Apple tags which you use. So in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, so Apple tags already exist. I can put it, it's directly with my Apple phone connected. So do I need something new? And then you threw about that you're going to create a community around it, which is basically what I understood was able to connect with each other. So if I'm sitting in a restaurant and I get a message from that particular stuff, somebody has it, somebody really needs it, and I have it, I can just directly go and give it to them. That's what I understood. But you gave me just an anchor or a hint to loop into it, but that is the real product for me. But there was nothing about that product. And I understand it was 1 minute, it was very small. Absolutely get that. But I feel like if we would have started saying there's a hardware solution, there's a software solution, the hardware solution is this, and the software associated with this, and that's where we're going to do community. So I would have got the product. But I loved it. And I think this has a huge potential.
Great, thank you so much. And we did have a comment here too, what the revenue model is. And I don't think for any of these particular pitches, they were so fast a minute. We really got into what the potential revenue models are. Do you need to hear that information in a 1 minute pitch? You're nodding your head, Kathleen, why?
I think it gives you a perspective as to, especially, I'd say the price point to the consumer. That would be very important, and then we can figure out the revenue from there. But I would always start with that early on.
I'm going to ask you, Liz, and you, Dr. Britton, and Ashita, I see you're already unmuted, but I want to bring you into the conversation now. Awesome. So I'm going to start, I think, with Dr. Britton. What questions do you have for our experts here now that you've got some really smart women to give you real-time feedback?
Yeah, I mean, the feedback was wonderful, and I so appreciate all the candid thoughts about what we're doing. So as far as the product goes, I actually submitted my first video with the product, but it's proof of concept stage. So I do have a device, but I don't like how it looks yet. And so, I actually switched the video out for one that kind of explained the concept, just because I felt like it gave a more global view of what we're doing. So I think sometimes I'm a little lost in how much to show in a 60-second pitch. I love the idea of giving more information about cost and market and everything. But when, we're pre-seed, we're going through FDA clearance. We're not allowed to say too much because we haven't gone through FDA clearance. So how much of a product overview? My understanding was that this was kind of a secondary thing to do, for a second callback so we could give a deeper dive. But how important is that to see it if it's not quite refined yet on the 60-second pitch?
What do you think, Peggy?
Well, I think you have a lot of issues around it, and you probably made the right decision from what I'm hearing. So, but I think then you should have said, perhaps early on, I have a prototype, I'm at prototype stage. But yeah, it sounds like if you'd waved it around, it might've been off-putting. But, and then of course, if it's a executive summary or something you're sending to somebody, you could have prototype stage and possibly a picture, because they would know that it's very early, but at least something exists.
Great. And Kimberly, for you, I'm curious, these videos, obviously we just solicited these from people, but in a produced video, you could really be doing something by putting information on the screen and written out. Is that something you'd want to see, or do you like it just in this kind of raw, very passionate, unproduced way?
Dr. Britton, I think that's a really good question. And my thought was really tailor it to the investors that you're speaking to. And I would go so far as to try to figure out if the investor had kids or not. And maybe, if the investor's female or not. I think some investors would really find a lot of value in seeing the product if they were familiar with breastfeeding and other breastfeeding type products. But if the investor like is single, doesn't have kids, maybe is a man, whatever it is, and the product might just be more confusing to them, they wouldn't really get it. Then maybe, it's better off to just do the verbal overview.
Yeah, and I'll just add that, that's kind of why I just throw out that it's, we have 5 patents. We have done a lot of work on this. So the IP is very strong. It's just, we want to scale it down and make it more presentable before we show people. And you're absolutely right. We've pitched to a lot of investors, and a lot of them single men, who have been very confused by the whole concept.
Ashita, I want to move on to you, mindful of time, because I try to keep the trains running on time. What questions do you have? You've got this panel of experts here right now. What do you want to know?
Yeah, I want to actually know, what it takes in terms of getting investments in women's health related focus, and that to in drug discovery and therapeutics, because a lot of times, larger pharma, if they are disinvesting in a lot of the drug discovery aspects of it, it is the smaller startups that get it to a stage where you have enough proof of concept and de-risked it to the point where you can then get strategic partnerships with larger pharma. But at the early stage, you need to get from point A to point B. And how do you navigate that early stage where you can entice people into your story, besides, talking about all the competition and relevant to why now? Why is it so important to deal with it now? And what is actually failing that's prompting us to do this work and de-risking our technology? So that's sort of like open to everyone, whoever wants to take the lead.
Davina, I see you nodding your head, so I'm going to call on you.
I'm gonna jump here. Thank you. I think there are a lot of early stage life sciences VCs. And I always say, when you're doing something which is a very deep tech, whether that's in AI, whether that's in health, especially in life sciences or space, and like those things which most of the generalist VCs really don't understand or don't have much knowledge to compare to. If at that point of time you have your angel round done by other health life sciences founders who have already had exits, or researchers and professors, and then after doing a $1.5 to $2 million of that angel round, then go and have a seed round from one of those life science companies who all have their corporate venture arms or smaller accelerators, then that's the right way and the path, because they will be able to give you that sort of credibility with it from the space. And I've seen that with a bunch of companies. Feel free to connect with me. There are a bunch of very deep life sciences investors, even as angel investors. They only do that part because that's their background and they understand it. Like people like us who are either AI or blockchain crypto, when I come across, one of my closest friend is building up a cancer thing, result, I just gave her some money because I know her for 30 years. I still don't have any idea what she's doing.
Sure. Yeah, no, we were very lucky to be in Y Combinator this summer in their S21 batch. And so we have started to build our seed round based on that and continuing to build on that momentum. Because it is true that, I was at the Keystone Gates organized that foundation on vaginal health last week. And the message was loud and clear that science can do better for women. We can do better for women. And the time is really now. Otherwise, 40 more years can go by and we may not see novel therapeutics in this space, and it's going to have a generational impact if nothing gets done. But Kimberly, I
just want to say one more thing. And also, I think women's solutions by women is such a big need right now, because we have been already suffering for every technical electric solution around our environment done by men, only for men, without thinking about how our bodies react to it. So I think that is also a very important point.
Great. I'm going to interrupt because we're mindful of the time. I just want to give Liz a little airtime too. Liz, I'm just curious. We don't know anything about your background. These women are scientists, they're doctors.
I'm not a doctor.
You just play one on
Zoom.
Entrepreneurship Day.
Yeah. My background. So I have an engineering background as well as a business background. And so kind of a little bit of marrying the idea, but unfortunately not enough to go super deep in both. And that a little bit leads to my question. First of all, thank you guys for invaluable feedback. But my question is really like how, this is a tech company in the likes of Tile, right? Like that's kind of a little bit what we're doing. And so I think what kind of like team-based milestones would you guys be looking for as an investor in terms of, what kind of skills do you think that a team needs to take this truly to market?
Do any of my
Got a
investors
question?
want to take that question? Raise your hand. I'm going to give it to Andrea.
Yeah, I think having someone who's built physical products like hardware or whatnot is important. And I think you could satisfy that potentially from your engineering background. I think if it's going to have a software component, also someone around that. And then I always like to see someone that is on the business side, because a lot of it is going to be go-to market. So that's kind of what I would look at. But definitely anyone with like a relevant background that understands either product development or the more science side of things.
Great. I want to thank all of our investors, all of our entrepreneurs so much for joining us today. And it is my great pleasure to now introduce our next guest, who is Jenny Britton, who is the founder and CEO of Jenny's Splendid Ice Cream.
Woohoo! It's so exciting to have Jenny Britton, the founder of Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams here. I mean, this is incredible to celebrate Women's Entrepreneurship Day with you. Jenny, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you.
So Jenny, I mean, I gotta know this. Like, as somebody from Ohio, I mean, tell me the beginning of your life. Like, how did you like create this unbelievable company?
Well, I studied art. I studied pastry. I was working at a pastry company when I was very young, and I started making ice creams. And the ice creams.
What do you mean? Like you just were like, okay, I love ice cream. I'm just going to start making it. Like while you're a pastry chef, like at home.
Yeah, you know how you do. It's like I was just in a creative time in my life. I was making a lot of different pastries. I was making a lot of different things. And the day that I made ice cream, I realized that ice cream is all about scent. And I had a really good friend who was actually a perfumer at Ohio State University. He's French. And I got to know him a little bit. And because I knew him, I was thinking about scent, and I realized that ice cream was more than just what you taste on your tongue. It was really about what you're experiencing in your nose. And from that moment on, I sort of felt like, oh, American ice cream is just scratching the surface of what it can be. I mean, even an inexpensive vanilla ice cream, a synthetic vanilla, is still about the scent of that vanilla, not the taste, what you taste on your tongue. But because I had been studying and pursuing and just advancing every curiosity that I had in those early days of my life, I was able to find that place where all the things that interested me crossed over with what somebody else might want. But I did start in a farmer's market, and I have a start small and build story, which is a little bit unusual these days.
So how did it all, so now you're making these ice creams, you're like, oh my gosh, these are so good, and all your friends are like eating them. How did you then like start your first store? Like, what was that? How did that all become?
Well, I didn't have money. I didn't have family with money. I didn't have a way of getting it from the bank. So I just started having to ask everybody that I knew for help. And eventually I found somebody who wanted to go into business with me, and she was able to borrow from her parents. And so we started a little company. She had another company, so she mostly worked there. And then I just worked at the ice cream company. And so I was able to work literally every single day. I think I might have had Mondays off in the beginning, because I was in a farmer's market and the market wasn't open on Mondays. And so but I worked every hour we were open.
So the first thing was like, you went to a farmer's market and you guys created a stand, and then you brought your ice cream there and you just started selling it.
That's right.
At that time, how old were you about?
22.
Okay, you're 22. Who cares, right? Like at that time, you're like,
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the most fun ever.
At the farmer's market, and you're like sitting there selling the ice creams. Like, what was that turning point where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to open up a store?
Well, that is, I mean, I was actually at the market, my first business, I closed my first business. And then I opened Jenny's a couple of years later. I wrote a business plan, and I was back in the market working every single hour that we were open for another 5 or 6 years. And so when you put it all together, it was really me in the market for 10 years before we started opening up our shops outside of the market.
You were literally at the farm stand, like literally for 10 years?
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it was an
incredible.
indoor public market. So I had a permanent space in the market,
Okay.
400 square feet.
Yeah.
And I think eventually we expanded that to 800 square feet. So we had a storefront, you know, in the market where we could make ice creams, serve ice creams. You know, so we had a little kitchen and all of that. So it wasn't just like a market stand where I would put up tables.
Right,
It was
right.
a permanent store. So, but yeah, I was in there for 10 years before we ever started growing. So this is what I think of as start small and build entrepreneurship, which is, you know, you literally are putting, you're taking dollars from your customers, you're making ice creams out of it, you're paying your customers and then, or your employees, and then you're taking the leftover and you're growing a little bit, or you're advancing a little bit forward. And that's it. You know, we just did that every day. So for the impetus for actually growing was that we couldn't make ice cream in the market anymore and sell it outside of the market. So we were selling to restaurants or to little bodegas or grocery stores, and we weren't allowed to do that anymore without a bigger, more licensed kitchen. And that's really by the Ohio State Department of Agriculture, not just the local health inspectors. And that was a whole other thing. So in order to pay for that kitchen, we needed another store. And that was really, in a way, the impetus, the first bit to grow. And that was in 2006. We opened our kitchen in 2006 and finally opened our first store out of the market in 2007. And then it was great. We didn't know it was going to be great, but it was. We had lines down the block, still do to this day, in that store. And we were able to then think, well, we should keep growing, because what's happening is that we're selling more ice cream, which means that we can get actually more direct with some of our other makers, growers, and producers. We like to be as direct as possible with our ingredients, but it's really hard in the world of dairy. It's really hard in the world of vanilla, for instance, or chocolate. So it started to help us understand that if we can do more, we can actually get more direct. Strangely, you think it's be the opposite, but it's not.
So where was your second store? Like how did that
Second
come
store, you mean it? Well, the second store was
so now you've got your store in Columbus. You got lines out, you know, across, around the city, right? Like to get in and eat your ice cream. Like so what made, like, when was it like, okay, I'm going to take the next step and I'm going to go and create another store?
Well, it was very close, and it was in a neighborhood not far from here too, because we knew that it was working and there was another available space. We opened several here in Columbus, and then moved. Our first one outside of Ohio was in Nashville, which is kind of like a second home for me. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. And when did you go to, like, my hometown of Chagrin Falls? When did you go there?
Yes, that was actually before Nashville. So that was our first outside of Columbus, was Chagrin Falls, and I think it was around 2010.
Okay, so now, Jenny, so now here you are. You've got how many stores altogether now?
We've got about 60 stores now.
60?
Yeah.
Holy cow. 60 stores all across the US only?
Yes. Yep.
To me, it seems like a dream come true. I mean, like, all this is going. Was there any obstacles? Like, did anything create,
No, never.
Zero
obstacles.
Ups and downs and all around when you're an entrepreneur, right? Whatever you do, I don't care what industry you're in. I mean, something was, and what was like the hardest thing you had to go through?
I mean, everything is hard. It is a, I think that in a way, one of the reasons that I like to work with kids who come from struggle is because kids and that was my story, we're resilient already. And I see people trying to do entrepreneurship who expect to make money quickly, or, and it's like, no, it is so hard. You have to be willing to do that work, all of it. And yes, you have, I always say it's not those aren't the bumps in the road. Those are the road. That's the road. You don't, if you kind of need things to be easy, then entrepreneurship isn't for you. It is very challenging.
So what is an example of like one thing that was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is going on right now. I got to get through this.
I mean, we had a big recall in 2015 and we had to recall all of our ice creams from across America. That was game-changingly difficult and set me off on a 5-year mental health journey. It was literally
what happened to
the
you?
hardest thing.
What happened?
So
Why did you have to recall?
Well, we found listeria in our ice creams, which is not something that you want to have in your ice creams.
Right.
Luckily, we only found 1 pint, but we recalled all the ice creams because we needed to prevent an outbreak, which we did. Once we prevented that outbreak, we also had decimated our company. So, from that moment, we had to begin rebuilding everything.
Now, I'd love to kind of hear this funding. Like, how did you make? Now, here you are, making, back in the day, making $600 a month, and now you've got 12 stores, 2,000. I mean, how did you do it? Like, what was the impetus to, being able to expand?
Well, we did actually take on a partner in 2016, which was great. And so we took on an equity partner who is helping us fund a lot of this. And then it's a lot of self-funding too. I mean, our stores, we do as much of that as possible. Very scrappy, very, very scrappy company. I mean, we do all of our creative in-house. We really just try not to, we try to stretch every dollar. We're very aware of every resource.
Okay, so really it was you and your partner at the beginning that were scrappy, making it happen. Each store was making a lot of revenue, so it enabled you to open up another store. And what was that? Was there any difficulties in finding that equity partner? And how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's nearly impossible to find an equity partner, but we had a brand. We had, extremely excited customers. We had people who, we just really, our company is a movement. I mean, it's not a marketing plan. I can't stress that enough because we had spent so much time, boots on the ground, we still do, serving people directly, caring for people. People love us in a different way than like they love the sort of the brands in their lives. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. There's just something different about how we've done things. And so you can't get that kind of, that brand loyalty or that brand excitement if you're just a marketing company with money behind you. You have to get proximate. You have to get in front of your people. You have to build that sort of, I guess, movement is the best way to put it. You have to just really live to your values, live to your standards, and then people feel that. We had that. And so we had a lot of people who wanted to invest in our company. And so we were able to choose the best partner for us, which was really great. And they've been awesome.
And was that like an Ohio firm or was that where?
No, they're in Boston.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then, so now you've got this equity partner. I mean, are you now, so in your role, are you just like hiring people, and how's that process been for you?
Yeah, I mean, so we've had them since 2016, and we immediately put together this incredible leadership team. It's been really amazing. So the one thing about being a founder that I think is really cool is that you surround yourself with people who inspire you, with these people who know more than you do about whatever it is they're bringing in, and then you get to learn from them every day. And so I just get to go to work with these amazing people who are bringing all of their talent and hustle and guts, we say, to the table every day. It's really cool. I think a lot about the word fellowship. That's the way that I lead. That's the company that I want to build, or that I've been building, is this idea that everybody brings in their awesomeness. Everybody at the table should be very unique, come from very different perspectives, and have very different knowledge and talent. But then together we make something greater than the sum of our parts. And that's our company. So we're each supposed to be different. We're each supposed to have, opinions and things that we believe in and bring to the team and help other people understand. And so it's really been it's a really cool thing. I see it and I just feel so much pride every day in them and in the teams that they have built.
So when you started, Jenny's, was there somebody you're like, oh, wow, I wish I could be like them? Was there anyone that you had in your life where you're like, this is who I want to emulate, this is who I want to be? Who was that? Who would that be?
Well, I mean, I like to, I have all these mentors who don't know that they're my mentors. I just watch them from afar and try to sort of, adopt the things that I like. But I looked to you know who I loved so much when I was young and still do is Bobbi Brown from Bobbi Brown Cosmetics.
Oh yeah.
She is, I mean, when I was young, she was kind of just starting out, and I just saw her as a role model. Saw her as somebody who had a passion, who turned it into her career and her life on her terms. And I loved that so much. The other one at the same time for me, like in the early 90s, mid 90s, was JC Wyatt, who's a fictional character from the movie Baby Boom. Remember that?
Okay, yeah,
oh my gosh, I loved that movie so much. She moves away from the big city, has, I don't know, a baby or adopts a baby, or somebody gives her a baby. She inherits a baby and ends up making this baby food company. And I was like, I just always loved that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. And I always felt like it was freedom so that as a woman and also as a rule breaker, not one to be managed kind of person, I always felt like entrepreneurship was freedom. And I would say that that's true today. Mm-hmm.
All right. So was it like, who was the first person that inspired you to be an entrepreneur?
I mean, my grandparents, when I was a kid, I had one grandmother who was an artist, and then my other grandmother who was an entrepreneur, and she and my grandfather would clean office buildings every night. So my grandfather would get home from working at the newspaper every day, and then we would eat dinner together, and then we would go back out and we would literally clean dentist's office or clean an insurance company office. And so that for them was like their travel money. And like my grandmother always said, if you can't find a job, make one. That was what she did. And so when I would learn to do an art project over at my other grandmother's house, Enid, I would take it over to Betty's house, and Betty would say, let's make 10 of these and sell them. So I really do think that, that in a way, entrepreneurship comes from a couple of places. First of all, I think some of us are born just not being able to follow the rules. And I definitely think that's me. I just always have to make my own discoveries. I always have to like be out, I don't know, play with it till I break it kind of thing. And then put it back together, always push past boundaries. But I do think that it can be nurtured also, because when you see that in front of you, like knowing that you can build whatever life you want to and do whatever you want, literally you can do whatever you want. When you see that,
you're willing to work for it though, Jenny. If you're willing,
you gotta be willing to work for it, but that's true of anything.
At a farm stand, you know what I mean? You gotta that's the whole.
Yeah, you got to suffer for it, but it's also such a great adventure. It's not an adventure unless it hurts. You know what I mean? And so if you want any adventure in your life at all, whether it's climbing Mount Everest or starting a company, it's going to hurt, and be proud of that. Those warrior scars that you build actually really do make you stronger, happier, healthier, have perspective over time. So just don't be afraid of that. If that would be some advice that I would give young people. Don't be afraid of it hurting, because it does, but it's also like, it also just really gives you this beautiful perspective. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Okay. Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton. She's like, wow. Dolly Parton. The ultimate music icon. How in the world did that? Tell me, I gotta know. How did that happen?
What we did was we had worked with Tyler, the creator, who's just a fantastic and amazing human being, so creative. And he's my buddy.
Tyler, the creator? Who's that?
He's a recording artist, just an amazing sort of young, creative force in the world, really, truly creative force. He's in a lot of things, does a lot of things. He's just a thinker. He's brilliant. Also, just a wonderful person. But so we had done this incredible collaboration with him, and we were like, well, who is next after that? Who do we want to work with is basically what we said. So we made a list of people, and of course, Dolly was like number one. So why
was Dolly number one? Is like, are you a fan or like?
She's Dolly Parton. She's like, there isn't a person in the country that doesn't love her. She's just a national treasure. She's maybe the only one right now that can appeal to literally everybody. I get goosebumps just thinking about her. What an incredible, incredible human being. And we are so lucky to have her at a time when we need people who are bringing us together, who bridge our differences, and remind us that we're not so different actually. And Dolly does that, and it's just beautiful. But so first on our list, we reached out, and it was an immediate yes from their team. None of us could believe it.
So great. Well,
I'm sure they get tons of requests.
That's so funny. Do you guys support any charities? Like, what is it that your company is supporting in the sense of philanthropic?
Oh, all sorts. I mean, just so many. And in fact, even in our stores, we have programs where the people in our stores can support local nonprofits that they are tied into and excited about. I mean, our company is working with everything from art is really important to us. I'm the chair of the board of an art college, and we support that because I love art education. I think it's so important. Communication. It's really communication is what a lot of art does, and art museums. My whole thing is small business and just like you and how entrepreneurship can change the world. And especially in my mind, start small and build entrepreneurship, where you just start from the ground up, you build slowly from the ground up, hold on to equity as long as you possibly can, because I believe that that's how we will eventually sort of shift the power structure in America. So that's really, really important to me, that we are showing that my story is not a pitch and launch story, which is basically all the stories that we hear right now. And that's a perfectly fine way of doing business and starting a business, that sort of Shark Tank kind of thing. But also you can just start and you can build really slowly. You can start with nothing more than a few bucks and what I call brain, brawn, and buddies, right? It's your brain, your brawn, and your buddies. And you can build. I say anyone in America should be able to start where they're at and build anything that they can imagine. And so that's where I put my work too. And there's just lots going on around that. But yeah, our company's involved in lots and lots of things, a lot of local stuff, because I think that's where we make the most difference. And that's all over the country, wherever we have stores.
I agree. So Jenny, anything else you want to tell us that we didn't cover? I mean, everyone's probably woo, this is an incredible, you're so impressive as a person. And I love all the stuff you're doing, with integrity with your product and everything. What is it, anything else that we should know about you?
I mean, I would just say, I don't know if there's anything else you should know about me, but I would just say that, that we should be encouraging our young people to take risks, to start, and not putting boundaries on what success looks like. So a lot of young people right now want to go into, entrepreneurship, but their parents are funneling them into business school. That's the wrong move. Some kids should go to business school, but most of those kids are going to end up working for entrepreneurs. If you have a child who has that entrepreneurial spirit, let them study anything they want, whether it's skateboarding or burritos or lipstick or cupcakes or ice cream or whatever, because they're going to find in their passion the business idea. And then from there, it's actually the business part of it's not that complicated. And then as soon as it does get complicated, you can bring in the experts from business school. So let's do better at supporting our young entrepreneurial kiddos. It's not about business. It's about making people feel loved, making people happy. It's about ideas. It's about passion, I think, more than anything.
Wow. Woohoo! Jenny, splendid ice cream. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. And we're so excited. I mean, this is just an amazing interview. All right, cool.
Amazing.
Jenny, look we did it on time.
We did it.
All right, perfect. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.
Judy Human, oh my gosh, my ultimate, you are I'm your biggest fan. Judy, I mean, you're the biggest celebrity. You were Oscar nominated documentary, literally almost about your life. Judy, that was my favorite movie, Crip Camp.
Thank you.
I mean, you're even more, to me, you're bigger than Angelina Jolie. I mean, it's close. Judy, it's close. It's close. You have a better smile than her, I'm telling you. I mean, Judy, thank you so much for joining us at Women's Entrepreneurs Today. We are so happy to have you.
Oh, it's so great to be with you, and such an honor for you to say so many amazing things.
Judy is one of the most incredible entrepreneurs in the world. She is literally a pioneer in the disability movement. She is a best-selling author. She's a star of a Netflix documentary She's like a fellow at the Ford Foundation. Oh my gosh. I mean, she's got so much, I mean, like, it's like an incredible career. And literally, she's literally the reason why we have the Americans Disability Act in the United States. Why you see like the wheelchair access. I mean, this is like an icon. So
let
Judy,
me
like,
first say to the audience, I am one of many people who were involved with, in the United States, the Americans with Disabilities Act and other legislation. One thing that we all know as women is that we can do a lot, but we can't do things by ourselves that are of such magnitude.
You all have to watch Crip Camp on Netflix, because you're going to see all the incredible people that Judy worked with. You're going to see a lot of guys. You're going to see like the Black Panthers. You're going to see some of the most incredible people in history that came together to literally get the government to get behind the American Disabilities Act. So Judy, let me ask you something. Did you ever imagine when you went, like, what was it like for the first time to show up at that camp?
So for people in the United States and some people in other countries, summer camps are very typical. And my brothers both went to camp. They went to the same camp, but I couldn't go to that camp because it wasn't wheelchair accessible. And at that point in the 50s and early 60s, there were no laws in the United States that spoke at all about issues of accessibility.
As I recall in that documentary, it was like the first time some of these children ever were with disabled people. Like it was the first time they ever met someone similar to them. Is that not correct?
I think in some cases, yes. In most cases, people had met other disabled people, but not in the same meaningful way. So if you watch Crip Camp, you'll see that one of the co-directors is a guy named Jimmy LeBrecq. And Jimmy is featured throughout the film because he went to Camp Jened the summer the film was, so let me just say, there was a small new group in Hunter, New York, and video cameras were just coming in. And they came
wow,
over,
like could you imagine, Judy? I mean, this is crazy. So like at that time, was that like the beginning of video cameras?
Yes.
Wow.
So
Think about everybody now has them on their phone. They're taking videos of everything. That's crazy. Okay. So people have to understand that. Like literally to have a video camera was a privilege. It was probably really expensive back then. And like only a few people had them. And this is like really a once in a lifetime opportunity to be at that camp. And all of a sudden this group of people are filming it. Did you ever imagine when they were filming this?
Like, actually, it was the campers that were filming.
Wow.
They brought the cameras and said, let loose, let the campers be the one that did the filming.
I would just love to know, Judy, at that time, right? You're at this camp. What did you dream of doing when you were growing up? Like, were you like, I want to be a doctor? What was it that you thought like at that camp or during that period of time? What did you want to be when you grew up?
It's a very interesting question because those kinds of discussions at that time were not happening the same way they do now for disabled kids. But camp really was a way for us to begin to ask ourselves the same question you just asked, which is, so what are you thinking about? What are you going to study? Are you going to go to college? What are your areas of interest? And that's where I believe we began to have meaningful discussions about things like we really didn't know other disabled people who were in positions like doctors or nurses. I mean, we're in 2021, and I did an interview the other day I do a program called The Human Perspective, which is a podcast of the first disabled woman to be hired in New York State as a nurse. The first in 2020.
Are you kidding me? Oh my, I mean, and like we talk about women, right? But like disability is the #1 minority in the world. And it's just, it's astonishing to me, you know, because I think back and I'm like, wow, what it must have been like to, you really like not even know what not even have hope for your future. Like you're just like in survival almost. And that, look at how far this has come, is just incredible.
I mean, I think what we were learning back at that time was that we needed to be creating our dreams, and we needed to be able to support each other and to begin to look at what we weren't able to do and really make a decision, which was, is it us or is it the system? And I think clearly what we believed was it wasn't us.
Well, wait. So when you were at that camp, you were 13 years old. You're like, wait a minute, this is not us, it's the system? Like literally you were having these conversations?
I mean, we were having discussions around why aren't buildings being built accessible? Why aren't buses accessible? You know, why are we not seeing other disabled people in a variety of types of jobs? Those were things that we were questioning. And when the film was done, the footage of the camp, that was in 1970. And I had filed a lawsuit against the Board of Education in New York City. I finished high school, I went to college, but when I started college, I was wanting to be a teacher. So you were asking me, what did I want to do? Later on in high school, I began to think about becoming a teacher, and friends of mine who had disabilities were saying, well, don't really tell people you want to be a teacher, particularly the government agency that was going to sponsor me to go to university, because if you told them you want to be a teacher, they would probably say, do you know any other teachers using wheelchairs? And I'd have to say no, and then maybe they wouldn't support me. And so when I graduated from university, Long Island University in Brooklyn, I filed to become a teacher. And we had to take a written exam, an oral exam, and a medical exam. All of those exams were given in completely inaccessible buildings. So if it wasn't for my friends carrying me up and down the stairs in my wheelchair, I wouldn't have even been able to take the test. I passed the written, I passed the oral. They failed me on the medical. And that's when I was very fortunate.
And they failed you because you were disabled?
Specifically, paralysis of both lower extremities, sequelae of poliomyelitis. This is before Section 504, which, when you were talking earlier about those demonstrations, was not about ADA, it was around 504. Yeah. And so I think it's very important to understand that we were not thinking that we were gonna have demonstrations and marches, and it was like something we were learning about from other civil rights groups. So in the United States in the 60s and 50s, the civil rights movement was growing, and you know, you had the March on Washington, you had the Montgomery bus boycott, you had many activities going on where we were seeing other people, not disabled people, or not apparently disabled,
right,
but Black people and others supporting them who are working on integration and inclusion. And I think many of us were really looking at this very seriously and saying, we have to be really committed to the change that we believe needs to be made. And we need to do whatever it is to get that.
So here it is. When you say we, were you still in contact with everyone at the camp and all that? And you were having these meetings, these were phone calls of, how did this all happen?
Well, I think, the community was getting bigger. It wasn't just the friends that we made at camp, but for those of us who were going to college, we were meeting disabled people at our various universities. And growing up in New York City, which is, a large area, there were disabled students on other college campuses. And we were beginning to meet each other, friends of friends of friends, and things of that nature. And so that's how we really, started advancing. We set up an organization in New York City called Disabled in Action. And that group came together because when I filed my lawsuit, we got a lot of publicity. And so people were writing to me or calling me or stopping me on the street. And we would talk about not just the discrimination that I had experienced, but the breadth of discrimination that disabled people were facing in employment, in housing, in transportation, in healthcare, etc.
Here you are, you're all like most in wheelchairs, right? And you take over the federal building. I mean, Judy, like and then you get the Black Panthers to help you. I mean, that must have been the most inspiring, like incredible, like experience of your life, was it?
Oh, I would absolutely say it was one of the highlights, definitely of my life, because first of all, the group was cross disability. So there were blind people and deaf people and people with all kinds of disabilities and different ages. And that was very important and continues to be very important because we are, as you were saying, a largest group of people in the world. We're an important group, the younger group, and really looking at education as a critical issue that still so many disabled people around the world are not in schools or they're not getting the education that their peers without disabilities are getting. So, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities is very important because it really was developed on the backs of disabled people around the world who really were able to come together and really get the United Nations to understand through numerous negotiations that went on for years.
So when did that all come about at the United Nations? Like, when did they decide, okay, we need to really get behind and pressure all these countries around the world to support disabled people?
So between 2002 and 2006, there were meetings that were occurring 3 to 4 times a year where disabled people from around the world were coming together to work with delegations from their countries at the United Nations. And the purpose was to develop the CRPD. And the CRPD is a great document. It was brought into force in 2006, or was approved by the UN in 2006 and went into force in 2008. And now there are about 180 countries who in fact have ratified. Ratification basically means that the government is agreeing that they will implement, comply with the articles of the treaty. There are 40 some articles in the treaty. Some of them, they're all very important, but there's an article on education, on healthcare, on transportation, on and on.
So how do you see now, entrepreneurship, honestly, like, do you, as somebody who's been truly an entrepreneur and intrapreneur your whole entire life in leading this movement, and I will say that you are leading it, right? It's like, what is the importance of entrepreneurship? I mean, what do you see as, how can we really advance women and disabilities?
I think one of the most critical issues is ensuring that disabled women are included in all the entrepreneurship programs that are going on. There are many groups, right? Women's business groups. Look in your community and find the disabled women who are running businesses. Find women who have disabilities who are wanting to be involved in setting up businesses. Making sure that your organizations are meeting on a regular basis with disabled people. I mean, I am an entrepreneur, but the reality is I never use that word until relatively recently. My father was an entrepreneur. He had his own business. I mean, I've been involved with many nonprofit organizations and now Judith Human LLC, but I never really put
If it just shows you, you could start a business at any age, right? And that really, I think that's the key for people to realize. You don't need to be, young. You can always believe in your dreams, right? And there's so many opportunities for disabled people, but everyone, if you just, literally do a Google search, right? And you can find these communities and connect with them. And the worst thing that could ever happen is people say no, but you try again and you meet someone that an organization that's going to support your efforts.
I think so, but I also feel that many disabled people, and now we're discussing disabled women, really do have entrepreneurial capacity. And the reason why I think it's so important to be including disabled people in the efforts that are going on in this area. You asked me a question earlier, like when I was at camp, when I was 12 and 13, what did I see as my future? And I said, well, there was a real absence of what I thought about because I didn't know other disabled people, men or women, in many positions. So if we're looking at women in entrepreneurship, we really need to make sure that the women's groups that have formed, because they needed to come together to be able to deal in many ways with discrimination, on getting loans, whatever it may be, it was important to do that. And like in entrepreneurship, the ability to learn about what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? How do you set up a business? What are good practices? What are bad practices? How do you get loans? What, all of these very critical things that make success something that is more of a reality.
Well, Judy, there's one thing that we should be really proud of, right? Is because of our last conversation, we had that conversation about how we need to support women with disabilities, right?
Yes.
And as you know, one of our board members for Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization is Lorene Arbus, whose father founded ABC Television and United Cerebral Palsy Foundation was watching, right? And how this is just like really incredible. But because of that, she said, I want to support, I said, like, how can I support? And I'm like, let's create a women in disability startup cohort, right? And because of that conversation we had, I went back to Judy and I said, hey, Judy, we want to start a women disability startup cohort. And if it wasn't for Judy, inspiring me and Women's Entrepreneurship Day to say, yes, we need to support women with disabilities, Judy then introduced us to an amazing organization founded by a guy, right? Because we don't discriminate against men or women. We need everyone to support our initiatives, right? We need them to support women. We need them to support women in disabilities and everybody with disabilities and everyone. We then were connected to Diego with Together International and created the first ever Women with Disabilities startup cohort. Woo-hoo, Judy!
Very exciting.
Yeah, and then
Really
really Diego took it to another level and literally took this vision that, because of you, right? And literally,
I'm a part of it. I'm not all of anything.
But because you inspired me to say, let's do this, right? And getting Lorene Arbus and her foundation to support the first ever disability startup cohort and to have Diego do it, he then brought in Google. And literally now it's one of the most exciting things in the world. Google has now come on board to fully fund with $300,000 grants to support this amazing initiative to support women with disabilities to become literally entrepreneurs. Woo!
Women and men, it's great.
Yeah. Okay, last thing, I'm dying to know. Okay, so when they make the movie about Judy Human, who do you want to play you?
Ali Stroker.
Have you already been asked that question?
Well, so we have a deal with Apple, and my book, Being Human, is being turned into a movie. So that,
Judy, Congratulations.
So that'll be coming out in the next couple years.
Oh, I'm so excited. Judy, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. So grateful.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you, everybody else.
Oh my gosh, I'm so like, what a day. What an incredible day. I mean, Judy Human, I mean, she's like my like, oh my gosh, I just, it brings me chills just to be able to say that like, I kind of know her and like, we've done some amazing stuff together. Okay, next up. Oh my gosh. I mean, this is like another person that I can't believe we have here today with us on Women's Entrepreneurship Day, the one and only Kathy Wood, the founder of ARK Invest, one of the largest investors in Bitcoin, in Tesla, SpaceX, Coinbase. It goes on and on and on and on. Welcome, Kathy Wood. Woohoo!
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Really happy to be here. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
So Kathy, I mean, you're like a legend. First of all, I want to say I got into Bitcoin in 2014 when I met a woman in Botswana that created the Satoshi Center. And I would never be in Bitcoin if I didn't create Women's Entrepreneurship Day, because literally this is how I learned about it, because the impact is having in all the lives of the millions of people in Zimbabwe, Botswana, Nigeria, and Venezuela. So I want to thank you, number one, for that, but we're not going to talk about that. Okay, Kathy, who are you? Where did you grow up? I mean, you're so phenomenal. Like, tell us a little bit about where did Kathy Wood begin? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, well, my parents are immigrants from Ireland, and we actually moved 10 times before I was 11 years old. England, Ireland, Alabama, upstate New York, California. So traveled all over the place, had to get used to new situations very quickly, size people up, size situations up. So that's how I started. My father's a design engineer and imbued us with this desire for education. And so I worked really hard in school and became very inspired by Arthur Laffer, who Art Laffer, Laffer Curve, supply side economics, introduced me to the financial business. And I said, wow, this was in 1980. I said, wow, 77. I want to be a part of this business. The world is our oyster. And so that's how I got my start in economics and then in equity research.
Okay, so you've had this like long career in finance and everything. I mean, and now you've become like a legend to all of us in, you know, in innovation and in the crypto world and et cetera. And so like, where was that turning point where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna like start my own fund, and I'm going to focus on innovation and technology. What year was that, and how did that become?
Well, the journey started in 2006, but in terms of ARK Invest, my love of investing in innovation really started with my first job in New York, where the chief investment officer gave me the opportunity to get into equity research, but said, you have to find your own universe. These analysts at Jennison are lifers. They're not going to give up their stocks. And so I had to find stocks. I was like a little dog scrapping under the table, waiting for a bone or something. And what happened back then, and what I now know today is known as convergence, is I had to find stocks that nobody wanted because they fell through the cracks. So database publishing, Reuters, Telerate, nobody wanted it. Database publishing, it was the technology analyst didn't want it and the publishing analyst didn't want it. It didn't fit either of them. I took it and was excited about it, and rightly so, because that evolved into the internet. So many times when people dismiss new opportunities because they don't fit neatly into the world as they know it, they don't want to have anything to do with it, too risky. And so fast forward after a career of following innovation and then investing in innovation, I saw that our financial world had lost the plot. Instead of what I saw in 1977, where the world was our oyster, and we're researching the way the world's going to work in 5, 10, 20 years, because of the tech and telecom bust, and then the 08-09 meltdown, the risk aversion in our industry has become extreme, so much so that they started, most portfolio managers and analysts started measuring themselves against benchmarks like the S&P 500. And so benchmarks are backwards looking. The stocks and benchmarks are there because of past successes. And so I decided in 2006, I needed to find a way to evolve out of my then firm without losing. I couldn't quit because I'd have lost all my deferred comp, but having philosophical differences, which is exactly what happened. So I said, the world needs a company. This is, and you know this, Wendy, as well as anyone else, given your entrepreneurial experience. The entrepreneurs are most successful when they are passionate about filling an unmet need. And we felt that that the unmet need was investing in the future. Ironically, that's what investing is supposed to be about, but it had become about investing in the past. So, and the other reason I wanted to start was we believe we're at we're in prime time now for the most explosive growth opportunities the world has ever seen, thanks to 5 innovation platforms: DNA sequencing, robotics, energy storage, artificial intelligence, and blockchain technologies. These 5 platforms, the seeds for all of them were planted during the 20 years that ended in the tech and telecom bubble, right? And then we went through a period of risk aversion, but the innovators didn't stop innovating. The seeds have been germinating for 25 years, and we're going to see these platforms converge and create such explosive growth opportunities, the likes of which we have never seen, but they will also create a lot of distress in the part of the world that is being disintermediated, disrupted, and perhaps destroyed.
Woo! I mean, oh my gosh, oh my God. Kathy, okay, let's get to this. When did you first invest in Bitcoin, and what was the price that you invested in?
It was 2015, and both personally and ARC was the first public asset manager to gain exposure to Bitcoin when it was $250.
Woo!
So today,
$250?
yes,
Oh
yes.
my God, I love
Yes.
it. Okay.
So now we're over $60,000. And really, we do believe we've just begun. Now, I say that knowing that we've gone from 30,000 at one point this year to 60,000. So you do have to time it, and you just buy those dips, because I really believe we're at the beginning of a journey. And Wendy, you set it up beautifully when you talked about the emerging markets who appreciate the freedom and purchasing power and protection that they are enjoying from Bitcoin. We don't appreciate it in this country and in the developed world as much, although I know this is being telegraphed around the world, videoed around the world. But those, El Salvador has deemed it legal tender, and now 12% by our estimates of all remittances are coming into El Salvador via Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going up in price. Many emerging market currencies in the world are actually getting hurt right now. We are going through a bit of a currency crisis. And when currencies go down, those poor populations lose purchasing power, lose wealth. Whereas Bitcoin, over time, we believe, is going to continue to appreciate and give these people, all of us, but everyone, including the emerging markets where there are, in many cases, corrupt regimes, and irresponsible fiscal and monetary policymakers, it's going to give people a chance to protect their wealth and their purchasing power and to live a good life.
All right, so now Kathy, you're woo, I mean, it's incredible what you've done so far. Now, what about NFTs? Are you now investing in that space, and do you yourself own any NFTs?
Well, I have given an NFT as a present. I wish I had bought it for myself. I gave it to the Chief Investment Officer of Janus and Associates, where I spent 18 years, celebrating his 88th birthday, still CIO there, God bless him, still into innovation. He's been such an inspiration in my life. And so a friend, Angie Dalton, and I decided what would be meaningful to him for his 88th birthday. And we got him an NFT. Lots of money was the artist. And this NFT we've given to him, and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are beginning to build on top of it. It's one of the most meaningful, he said it's one of the most meaningful presents he's ever received, because it's really now involving the whole family. And what's even better about NFTs is it is really giving creators what they deserve. Very often, a creator of a painting gets one payment and that's it, but doesn't enjoy all of the spin-offs out of that painting. Well, now with the way NFTs are verifiable and identifiable, anything built on top of lots of money's painting, he will receive a royalty for. So it's a fascinating new world. It has everything to do with property rights. So whereas Bitcoin is the first global, private, rules-based monetary system, think about that. We've never had it. Highly disciplined, guaranteeing purchasing power as we approach 21 million units, and that's it. NFTs are the first global private rules-based property rights system. Now, and so this is for non-fungible tokens. You might say Bitcoin is a fungible token and is also considered to be property, but NFTs are non-fungible. When it's verified that you own it until you release it.
All right, so now Kathy, let's go to Tesla for a second, okay? What's it like to work with Elon Musk? I mean, are you able, like, it's because you're a big investor, are you allowed to say to Elon Musk, you know, stop bullying Bitcoin? And are you allowed to do those kind of things? Or what give us a story about Elon. When was the first time you invested in him? And what is that relationship like?
Well, we invested very close to the IPO. I think that was in 2012 at my last firm, and have been with him all the way along. So we did a podcast with him in March, I think, of 2019, and it was fascinating to listen to him. He is the Thomas Edison of our age. He is truly brilliant. He's also a very nice person. Many people, he gets a bad rap out there, but he's very demanding, very high standards, very high standards. One of the nicest things he said at the end of our podcast, and then we had about 45 minutes with him afterwards, he said, listen, you know, you seem to be pretty straight shooters and you do your homework. So if you see anything you think is a bit off in terms of the assumptions we're making or what we're saying or what we're doing, you know, I'd love to know. So he, like he really does appreciate feedback from people he respects. And the reason he respects us is because of the kind of research we're doing. We're doing research unlike most other investment firms, if not all other investment firms. We're giving our research away for free. And we are effectively having, as we become a part of the communities that are innovating and engage with the innovators, they are battle testing our assumptions, because we're doing research about how big these markets are going to be, how quickly they're going to scale, how fast the costs are going to decline, how quickly the different sectors are going to embrace these new strategies. And so they give us feedback, very frank feedback that we need. If we're wrong, making an assumption early on as we're evolving these exponential growth trajectories, if we make a mistake early on, it could be an exponential mistake if we carry it through. So we're very grateful to the community. And just like that, Elon Musk, and we don't do it very often because frankly, I think he's running an incredible business that has created 4 barriers to entry that we are beginning to believe will be very tough to catch. We're beginning to believe that Tesla is running away with the ball. So especially when it comes to autonomous technology.
Now, look, Kathy, what is the advice? Because we don't have a lot of time, and I wish we had an hour. But like, listen, Kathy, if there was advice that you know, when you were younger, that you would wish you'd receive, what would that advice be?
Well, I think the most important thing for a young person starting a career is heads down, work really hard. Don't aim for superficial things like titles and all of that, but aim to make your boss look brilliant. Now, I did do that early. I think I was raised that way. Make your boss look brilliant. Bring him ideas that he wouldn't have because you're coming from a newer world. If you look at our employee base, very young, 1 foot in the new world, and I am inspired by them all day long because they have so much energy, enthusiasm, spontaneity, agility, and they keep me young. So I would say that is really important to bosses who want to give people a chance to grow and evolve their own careers. Try and get into a position with a person like that. And I think also make sure your success can be measured. You know, in our business, our success is measured every day, for better or worse. You know, I get a mark to market every day. And I've learned not to pay too much attention to the short term and to think in 5-year time horizons. But that measurement is very important because no one can take it away from me, for better or worse. And sometimes it's for better and sometimes it's for worse. But on average, over time, we've done pretty well.
And now, when you grow up, Kathy, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, well, I think a lot of it would have to do with education. And sure, disrupting the financial world, I didn't expect to be as disruptive with using social media and everything. And I do hope that we're inspiring others in the financial world to look to the future instead of cowering in the benchmarks of the past. And that's a bit of an exaggeration. Everyone is forward thinking, but there is so much happening that we really need to allocate capital to its highest and best use. And that is innovation, which levels the playing field, gives everyone a shot, everyone a white sheet of paper to just go and do it. So that's the first thing. But education, as you know, we give our research away for free. So we're already in the education world. And I've started a foundation around education. It's called the Innovation Foundation. And it's education through the lens of innovation from toddler through high school. And making it fun, inspiring young people to achieve great things for themselves, their families, and for their respective countries, right? So I think education is so important. I grew up, and my father, especially my father, but both my parents, education, and it's paid off for me. And so I would like to help inspire young children by evolving our educational system a little bit the way we've evolved the financial world.
So Kathy, if there was a movie made about you, who would you want to play you?
Well, if we were bringing artificial intelligence into this and holograms, and if I were able to do this, I've always loved Audrey Hepburn. But if we're talking about great actresses alive today, Natalie Portman, I think inspires.
I can see that.
Yeah, and you know, she started as a teenager in the business. She stopped, or maybe she did go to Harvard while she was still acting. She's well liked by everyone, it seems. You know, I judge actors by how they behave around other people because those stories come out, and she seems to be beloved, I would say, and you know, because I think she's a good person, and she's also been very versatile in her acting across, different genres, which I think is wonderful as well. So yeah, I think that would be really fun.
Now, Kathy, we have our breakout session now, and we would love you to join us, number one. Everyone, I want to say thank you, Kathy, truly for joining us on Women's Entrepreneurship Day. And everyone, we are going to be celebrating Women's Entrepreneurship Day physically, woohoo, in New York City in May, where we're going to honor Kathy Wood, Nadja Swarovski, Judy Human, who you saw in person, who are going to receive the Pioneer Awards that were just recognized in US Congress yesterday for all their amazing work and all their accomplishments and how they're impacting the world. And I just want to say to everybody, we are so lucky to have Kathy with us. We need, as women, to embrace technology. This is our time. We are equal. We all have our minds, and we don't need to be really strong men to do things anymore. We can do it with our minds, and we can be part of this, and we need to embrace it. And everybody, we are going to start right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're going to do breakout rooms. All the speakers that were here with us today are going to join us. Remember, we are raising enough money for 1,000 impoverished women to receive microloans to start their entrepreneurial journey. And we're going to be doing this whole project to empower 100,000 women in Afghanistan with crypto, so they can have an peer-to-peer ecosystem to not have to worry about the government transition and the waiting in line for 10 hours for banks. So we have all this impact. We hope you will join us. Now let's start with our breakout Zooms for Women's Entrepreneurship Day. Woo!